All right. Well, hey, we just finished up our big Kriegssiel game, and I wanted to kind of go over a little bit of this with you, including the players who were in the game. You can view this on your own, obviously. It's probably what you're doing now. I kind of want to go through and give a few remarks about each player. Ivan here, Mostinicx, he did absolutely fantastic. He had veteran cavalry. He came in from way back here, came down through Gettysburg, performed brilliantly, did exactly what he was supposed to do. He overwhelmed a federal cavalry unit that I'm afraid wasn't being too well commanded, unfortunately. Ultimately, he captured some supply wagons and a lot of prisoners. They've actually been removed from the map, which is why you don't see them. But he performed absolutely brilliantly. Mayer, who was my friend who was supposed to be commanding this, ended up not commanding it. So control of this brigade was given to Roberts over here, simply because he was one of the last people to come on the map. He wasn't going to see much combat. So we replaced Mayer with Roberts, while Roberts also commanded his unit, who was really just marching the whole time. But again, fairly well commanded. Mayer came on along the Hanover Road, came into Gettysburg, came down through the town, and then tried to get in on the action. But Ivan Mostinicx actually had the situation under control. Once he sorted his unit out, he was able then to come in here and attack the Union rear. We ended the game before the attack could be processed or worked out. Nonetheless, it was a brilliant move on his part. So both of the Confederate cavalry commanders, Mostinicx and Mayer/Roberts, performed very, very well. All right, up here we have Robbins, who formed a line along this ridge for most of the battle. Not much to say. He eventually wheeled into position here. Those are reasonable deployments. Unfortunately, he just really didn't participate in the battle that much because he was simply not in an effective position. However, the Confederate strategy was to be able to clear out on one of these roads, like the Hanover Road back here or something else. And in such case, in view of such orders, if that was what motivated Robbins, then Robbins did precisely what he was supposed to do. He occupied a high ground position, Culp's Hill. He aligned himself on a ridge, and that was where he would want to park in real life and stay there and make sure that the enemy is denied the opportunity to attack their units exiting along the Hanover Road, transiting east to join the main battle, which is technically about to happen in a day on another map further to the east. All right, let's talk about Lou. Lou also, unfortunately, dropped out pretty early, so his units were not well commanded. I'm being pretty harsh here to my friend Terry Newton, who commanded both his cavalry that was captured by Ivan and Barry Lou. But Terry used his cavalry as though they were Napoleonic troops, and they are not. They're American Civil War cavalry. He should not have used it as such. I don't know why he chose to charge and use them in a way for which they were not designed. But that is the reason why the Union cavalry performed so terribly poorly. It was poorly deployed, shattered early on. It was just a very bad situation for the Union. Had the cavalry been deployed more effectively, it easily would have held off the Confederate attack on the right, and the Union rear would have been perfectly secure. All right, let's see here. Let's talk about Mayoraz. Mayoraz was one of the first people on the field. In fact, he was the first person on the field, and he defended in a semicircle, more or less like this. He dug in his troops. He spread them out to cover these approaches that he expected the Union to use. The problem, which some of you, if you're a astute viewer, may already see, is the Union came this way. And so he was actually facing the wrong way to prevent the Union attack. So the Union actually came this way. Now, wisely, he shifted his units from over here this way, and he was able to cover the approach. And as you can tell, the Union did not get past him. What you may not know is that he spent so much time in combat, not only did his men run out of water, but he ran out of ammunition. And without water and ammunition, had the battle continued, he would have crumpled under a Union attack. But interestingly, the Union pulled back and did not attack. They themselves had suffered greatly under the defensive fire of Mayoraz's troops and were compelled to basically regroup and reorganize. However, they did have ammunition and supply. They could have pushed if they really wanted to, in which case Mayoraz would have finally broke. Nonetheless, Mayoraz performed exceptionally well. He was, of course, being replaced by Dunn, who really his units did not see actual action, but they were coming forward to replace Mayoraz, which is precisely how they should have been used. So competent use of troops by Dunn. Dal Bello, Dom Dal Bello. I want to pronounce his name correctly. I believe I am. I apologize if not. Nonetheless, he did an excellent job. He deployed his units in expert fashion. He went toe-to-toe with actually his counterpart brigade, mirror opposite, elite units even, on both sides. He did a fantastic job, and he ran them out of ammunition. He inflicted more losses on them than they did on him. He performed expertly. Unfortunately, he didn't get to see his breakthrough moment. It didn't happen. The game ended. But had we gone another turn or two, had he ordered an attack, these guys were made of paper at that point, and he would have been able to plow through, at least until Dunn arrived, in which case then he would have had his hands full with Dunn's units. Likewise for Torres. Torres is a person I didn't really talk much about in the game when he was present, but I do want to acknowledge him here in sort of my own recording. Torres performed really, really well. Again, he sent his units in. He pressured the enemy flank. It was a brilliant attack. He came in like this. Attacked the enemy flank, absolutely picture perfect. He sent the units in with support. He did exactly what he was supposed to do. The only problem for him is right as he went into attack, the Confederates appeared here and somewhere over here. Actually, I think it was here. So they all appeared at more or less the same time. It was sort of a coincidence, an unfortunate one. And with the appearance of these units here, and some lucky rolls, lucky die rolls, if you will, lucky combat results here along Mayoraz's line, Torres was forced to, his troops were repulsed. Nonetheless, I gave him credit. He was able to reform his troops. They returned to combat effectiveness and were able to move forward, or they would have been able to if needed. Otherwise, they could have also competently defended against these troops. Torres's troops also broke up an attack from Benson's cavalry. Benson's cavalry, a turn or two prior, had come in here and had been shattered in large part because of Torres's troops. So Torres, again, player of the day, absolutely brilliant. Dal Bello, player of the day, brilliant. Another player of the day acknowledgement to Mayoraz and to Mostinicx. Again, those players performed absolutely outstanding. Okay, Martin James was in command of all these other units. I don't know where his avatar went. Where did I move his avatar? It must have got moved. But he is somewhere out here. Oh, there. No. Yeah, here he is. He broke up his command quite significantly, which is something that concerned me. He has a unit over here. He has a couple units over here. I think he has one or two units here. So he really broke up his command substantially. This is another thing that the Confederates did back here between Fryer and McMillan. McMillan broke up his units and gave these three to Fryer. Again, I frown on that sort of thing. I don't mind it in an emergency, but this just... I would have liked to have seen these guys keep their units together and command together. Nonetheless, everything went well enough for James. He didn't suffer any major setbacks or losses. So an average performance from James. I just wish he would have kept his division together and... but that's just a preference. Obviously, what he did was effective. It just seemed a little disjointed because, again, his unit was broke up. He actually did expert job getting his supply train out of the way, but also in a position where it could support the army. So that was actually a plus for him. He did well. All right. Della, Papa, Silsby, and Silsby III. They all brought their units online. They had very little time to play, more or less, because they came up all this way. They had to wait for the road to clear, and it was just a lot of effort on their part. It took a while to get up there. Once they were up there, they deployed just fine, just well enough. But, of course, Roberts is coming in to attack their flank. They, of course, would refuse the flank. They would push this way. There would be a long skirmish here between these units, and it would not be clear what the outcome would be. I can't tell you what the outcome would be just by looking at it. We would have to process another turn or two to see. Part of what leaves it in doubt is both sides have divisions that are more or less unused. Here is a Union division that is in reserve. They're actually back here. I've moved them up to in the post-game debriefing to say they would have been deployed to block this cavalry attack coming in here. They would have deployed very quickly and successfully. But had they been put in over here or up here or something, even here, there's kind of a traffic jam. I think had they put in over here on the left, they would have overwhelmed the Confederates' right flank. They would have been able to sort of start rolling things up. But, of course, that never would have happened, not with this cavalry here. Had the Union cavalry under Newton's command performed ably, they would have blocked that. The reserve could have gone in here on the left, and it would have clearly been a Union victory. They would have at least bagged one or two Confederate corps, but, of course, that did not happen. All right, let's talk about, again, Della, Papa, Silsby III, all performed competently in that they deployed online like they should. And again, we would have had a skirmish here that would have lasted for a while. The outcome is impossible to predict. Unfortunately, over here, we have Karn. Now, Karn actually performed just fine. He deserves recognition for following his orders. He came down this way, and he basically was guarding against a possible Union advance. They expected perhaps the Union would come in this way or along one of these other roads, and so they were deploying. They were basically marching down this way to prevent that from happening. But as the game progressed, I think they realized the Union troops are not coming along either road. Let's head this way to get into the fight. Again, a good maneuver overall. Kudos to him, to Carnes, for following orders. Nonetheless, it wasn't something he needed to do. He was essentially unused. The Union did a good job keeping their supplies sort of aggregated, but close to the lines. They basically formed a supply park, which I think was an intelligent move. Mind you, it creates a liability when these guys start punching through, but you do this on the assumption this isn't going to happen. And if you had any different commanders here, I don't think it would have happened. Here you have the Confederate supply train, and oh my gosh, it goes on forever. I think this was a mistake, and it really slowed down the Confederates. They should have moved these units off the road, let the infantry pass through, but they also needed to carry at least a couple, 2 or 3 with them. Even if they did decide to aggregate most of the supply in a park, I would have done it a little closer to the front line, like where I just drew the circle. That's not what they did, but it's what I would have done after allowing the infantry to pass through. Again, all the players did pretty well. I am not sure with what McMillan was doing. I understand why he was doing it. He wanted to have Fryer make an effective attack here. I kind of get that. I just don't usually like it when players transfer their units to other commanders. It's just a personal thing. Maybe I have a little hang-up over that. Nonetheless, everybody did fine. Nobody failed the Kriegssiel, other than possibly Newton, who really just didn't do a very good job of holding the flank. Otherwise, everything else went really well. So an A grade for sure to Torres, to Dal Bello, to Mayoraz, and to Mostinicx. Thanks, you all. Great game.